محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. يا أبا القاسم يا رسول الله يا إمام الرحمة يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا أمير المؤمنين يا علي بن أبي طالب يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا فاطمة الزهراء يا بنت محمد يا قرة عين الرسول يا سيدتنا ومولاتنا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحة عند الله، اشفعي لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها المجتبى يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا حسين بن علي أيها الشهيد يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن الحسين يا زين العابدين يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها الباقر يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا، إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله، وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله، اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا عبد الله يا جعفر بن محمد أيها الصادق يا ابن رسول الله، يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا موسى بن جعفر أيها الكاظم يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن موسى أيها الرضا يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا جعفر يا محمد بن علي أيها التقي الجواد يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا الحسن يا علي بن محمد أيها الحادي النقي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا أبا محمد يا حسن بن علي أيها الزكي العسكري يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا وصي الحسن والخلف الحجة أيها القائم المنتظر المهدي يا ابن رسول الله يا حجة الله على خلقه يا سيدنا ومولانا إنا توجهنا واستشفعنا وتوسلنا بك إلى الله وقدمناك بين يدي حاجاتنا يا وجيحا عند الله اشفع لنا عند الله. يا ساداتي وموالي إني توجهت بكم أئمتي وعدتي ليوم الفقر وهاجتي إلى الله، وتوسلت بكم إلى الله، واستشفعوني بكم إلى الله، فاشفعوا لي عند الله، واستنقذوني من ذنوب عند الله، فإنكم وسيلتي إلى الله، وبحبكم وبقربكم أرجو نجاة من الله، فكونوا عند الله رجائي يا سادتي يا أولياء الله. صلى الله عليهم أجمعين، ولعن الله أعداء الله ظالميهم من الأولين والآخرين. آمين رب العالمين. الفاتحة.
I should adjust it. Make it higher.
A little bit higher.
That's okay, or a bit higher. Okay.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ألف لام ميم. ذلك الكتاب لا ريب فيه هدى للمتقين الذين يؤمنون بالغيب ويقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون والذين يؤمنون بما أنزل إليك وما أنزل من قبلك وبالآخرة هم يوقنون أولئك على هدى من ربهم وأولئك هم المفلحون. إن الذين كفروا سواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون. ختم الله على قلوبهم وعلى سمعهم وعلى أبصارهم غشاوة ولهم عذاب عظيم. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون. في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا ولهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون. وإذا قيل لهم لا تفسدوا في الأرض قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون. وإذا قيل لهم آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أنؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون. وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلوا إلى شياطينهم قالوا إنا معكم إنما نحن مستهزئون. الله يستهزئ بهم ويمدهم في طغيانهم يعمهون. أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى فما ربحت تجارتهم وما كانوا مهتدين. مثلهم كمثل الذي استوقد نارا فلما أضاءت ما حوله ذهب الله بنورهم وتركهم في ظلمات لا يبصرون. صم بكم عمي فهم لا يرجعون. أو كسيب من السماء فيه ظلمات ورعد وبرق يجعلون أصابعهم في آذانهم من الصواعق حذر الموت والله محيط بالكافرين. يكاد البرق يخطف أبصارهم كلما أضاء لهم مشوا فيه وإذا أظلم عليهم قاموا ولو شاء الله لذهب بسمعهم وأبصارهم إن الله على كل شيء قدير. يا أيها الناس اعبدوا ربكم الذي خلقكم والذين من قبلكم لعلكم تتقون. الذي جعل لكم الأرض فراشا والسماء بناء وأنزل من السماء ماء فأخرج به من الثمرات رزقا لكم فلا تجعلوا لله أندادا وأنتم تعلمون. وإن كنتم في ريب مما نزلنا على عبدنا فأتوا بسورة من مثله وادعوا شهداءكم من دون الله إن كنتم صادقين. فإن لم تفعلوا ولن تفعلوا فاتقوا النار التي وقودها الناس والحجارة أعدت للكافرين. وبشر الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات أن لهم جنات تجري من تحتها الأنهار كلما رزقوا منها من ثمرة رزقا قالوا هذا الذي رزقنا من قبل وأتوا به متشابها ولهم فيها أزواج مطهرة وهم فيها خالدون إن الله لا يستحيي أن يضرب مثلا ما بعوضة فما فوقها فأما الذين آمنوا فيعلمون أنه الحق من ربهم وأما الذين كفروا فيقولون ماذا أراد الله بهذا مثلا يضل به كثيرا ويهدي به كثيرا وما يضل به إلا الفاسقين الذين ينقضون عهد الله من بعد ميثاقه ويقطعون ما أمر الله به أن يوصل ويفسدون في الأرض أولئك هم الخاسرون كيف تكفرون بالله وكنتم أمواتا فأحياكم ثم يميتكم ثم يحييكم ثم إليه ترجعون والذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا ثم استوى إلى السماء فسواهن 7 سماوات وهو بكل شيء عليم وإذ قال ربك للملائكة إني جائل في الأرض خليفة قالوا وتجعل فيها من يفسد فيها ويسفك الدماء ونحن نسبح بحمدك ونقدس لك قال إني أعلم ما لا تعلمون أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم يسألونك عن الأنفال قل الأنفال لله والرسول فاتقوا الله وأصلحوا ذات بينكم وأطيعوا الله ورسوله إن كنتم مؤمنين إنما المؤمنون الذين إذا ذكر الله وجلت قلوبهم وإذا تليت عليهم آياته زادتهم إيمانا وعلى ربهم يتوكلون الذين يقيمون الصلاة ومما رزقناهم ينفقون أولئك هم المؤمنون حقا لهم درجات عند ربهم ومغفرة ورزق كريم كما أخرجك ربك من بيتك بالحق وإن فريقا من المؤمنين لكارهون يجادلونك في الحق بعدما تبين كأنما يصافون إلى الموت وهم ينظرون وإذ يئدكم الله إحدى الطائفتين إنها لكم وتودون أن غير ذات الشوكة تكون لكم ويريد الله أن يحق الحق بكلماته ويقطع دابر الكافرين ليحق الحق ليحق الحق ويبطل الباطل ولو كره المجرمون صدق الله العلي العظيم صلوات
آواز بلند صلوات. پھر سے صلوات. غربت میں قتل ہو گیا مظلوم بے کفن. غربت میں قتل ہو گیا مظلوم بے کفن. میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن. میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن. تیروں پہ تھا رکھا ہوا لاشا حسین کا. ڈوبا ہوا لہو میں تھا کرتا حسین کا. آواز تھی حسین کی بہنا کفن کفن. میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن. ایک دل پہ داغ میں نے 72 اٹھا لیے. کچھ داغ میں نے قلب کے اندر چھپا لیے. چھپتے نہیں چھپانے سے داغے رسن رسن. میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن. دیکھا ہے بابا میں نے جو منظر بتاؤں کیا. نیزوں پہ تھا رکھا ہوا سر ہر شہید کا. گھوڑوں کے دوڑنے سے تھا ٹکڑے بدن بدن. میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن. برچھی کلے جائے علی اکبر میں جب لگی. بابا کو دی صدا کبھی آواز مجھ کو دی. کہتا تھا سینہ تھام کے اماں چبھن چبھن. میں بھائی بھائی کہتی تھی لاشا بہن بہن. سورہ الفاتحہ. کیے ہیں شند نے دو قد ایک خنجر سے. کیے ہیں شند نے دو قتل ایک خنجر سے. لہو حسین کا پہنچا बहन की चादर से कि ये है शिम्र ने दो कद एक खंजर से गरीब ज़हरा वहीं रोते रोते मर जाता गरीब ज़हरा वहीं रोते रोते मर जाता बहन उठा के न लाती जो लाश अकबर से कि ये है शिम्र ने दो कद एक खंजर से किसी ने बालों से पकड़ा कोई उठा के चला किसी ने बालों से पकड़ा कोई उठा के चला सरे हुसैन को मारा किसी ने पत्थर से कि ये है शिम्र ने दो कद एक खंजर से आवाज़ बुलंद सलावत
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على محمد وآله الطاهرين اللهم صل على محمد وآله محمد. The ayat of today were ayat 1 until 8 of Surah Al-Anfal, chapter number 8 of the Holy Quran. Our focus is on ayah number 2 as well as ayah number 3, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ. Innama means only, meaning surely the believers are only these people that I'm about to describe. Meaning, if I don't fulfill these 5 characteristics that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is about to explain for us, then I don't make the cut of Iman. I cannot call myself a believer if I don't fulfill these 5 characteristics. إِنَّمَا الْمُؤْمِنُونَ الَّذِينَ. Number 1, إِذَا ذُكِرَ اللَّهُ وَجِلَتْ قُلُوبُهُمْ. When they remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they tremble in awe. Now sometimes when we think about our hearts trembling, we think of fear. That sometimes when you see someone scary or powerful, someone that could fire you from your position or get you into a lot of trouble, maybe a child with respect to his parent when he does something wrong, we think of fear. But here when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the hearts trembling, here it's not out of fear of a punisher or an oppressor or someone with power, but rather it's awe out of the greatness and magnificence of that individual. So we see that in the middle of the night, Amirul Mu'mineen is awake and he's crying and he's weeping such that his beard is soaked with his tears. Or that Imam Zainul Abidin alayhi salam was reciting this long dua Abi Hamza Thumali in the middle of the night of the month of Ramadan, and he's whispering and he's crying and he's shaking and he's trembling. And now sometimes someone might come and say, well, they did this to teach me what to do. No. The Imam alayhi salam had such a high level of awareness of who he was conversing with, that out of awe of the Lord that he has recognized, he was honestly trembling, not out of fear of Allah, but out of awe of who Allah is and who He is in comparison. Number 2, the second characteristic that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions in the ayah, if إِذَا تُلِيَتْ عَلَيْهِمْ آيَاتُهُ زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. When the ayat of the Quran are recited, either he is reciting them or they're recited to him, like the Qari recited today. زَادَتْهُمْ إِيمَانًا. 2 nights ago we mentioned the example of still water. And we said that when water is still, it collects bacteria. On the flip side, when water flows, that water is clean and pure. Our iman is the same. One cannot say that my iman is at this level and now we made it and we're here. No. When your iman is stagnant, like that still water, it collects bacteria. So your stagnation is regression. Just because you're not progressing doesn't mean you're staying in the same spot. Staying in the same spot means you're going lower. Which is why we began this tradition here at Al-Mahdi of explaining the ayat of the Quran from the words of our scholars and the mufassirin, such that when you hear the ayat of the Quran, there should be a subsequent explanation with it as well. And inshallah the translation should also be on the board so you can follow along. Such that when you recite the ayat of the Quran, each ayah that you're reading, you're contemplating upon. And therefore your iman is increasing. Number 3, the third characteristic that's mentioned in the ayah is وَعَلَىٰ رَبِّهِمْ يَتَوَكَّلُونَ. Number 3 is tawakkul. The believers have tawakkul. Now sometimes when we reach a tough situation, we say, this is Allah's job to fix. Allah will solve the problem. Only Allah can remove the oppressors. Only Allah can remove corruption. Only Allah can fix my affairs and set my affairs aright. No, if this were the case, why did Allah send all of these thousands of messengers to call the people and tell the people, roll up your sleeves and get to work? Which means that I have a responsibility. And this is why we see when the Muslims reach a dead end in the plains of Uhud, under the shadow of Mount Uhud, the believers have ran away. And now the Prophet is on his own. And one man is claiming that the Prophet has been killed. There is one man that stands his ground and says, I believe that the message of Allah is the truth. And I believe that it's my responsibility to defend the Holy Prophet. Even if he has died, it's my job to remain on this path. And therefore he stays alone. And this is none other than our Mawla, Amirul Mu'mineen, Ali ibn Abi Talib, alayhi salatu wassalam. Number 4, الَّذِينَ يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ. Very quickly, يُقِيمُونَ الصَّلَاةِ is not the same as الَّذِينَ يُصَلُّونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala didn't say those who pray. Rather, He said those who maintain prayer. One meaning of maintaining prayer is that you pray correctly. You focus, you have concentration, you're not distracted before the prayer, so that when you enter the prayer, you can focus on the prayer. This is one meaning. But another meaning is something else. That there's one time where you and I, in the corner of our rooms or in our homes, we pray our salat, and our salat is with concentration. But there's another time where I pray communally in congregation, such that not only do I pray, but I bring my brothers as well to pray. And then we pray together as a unit. This is a higher level now, where not only am I on the path of salvation, but rather as a unit, as a group, as a community, we've maintained and established the prayer together. Finally, our last point is something we mentioned yesterday, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. We said yesterday that infaq is not the same as giving. Infaq means you fill a gap. It means that there's something missing, there's a void, and you're fulfilling the need that exists. Inshallah, we are not amongst those people that think that I can pat myself on the back every time I give some money to the center so they can paint the walls again, even though they were painted not too long ago. This isn't infaq. It may be a good thing. Maybe painting the walls is something that will make the center look nicer. Fine. But I need to go into society and look for those voids and those gaps that exist and try my best to fill them. Inshallah, we are amongst the believers that fulfill these 5 characteristics with the barakah of salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad.
Assalamu alaikum. Hello. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Just a few announcements before we move on with the program. Just a quick reminder that there's daily English and Urdu programs. with English starting at 7:30, followed by Salah, and then the Urdu program right after Maghribain. The English programs with Sayyid Zisham will continue until next Wednesday, July 17th. Itinerary for the English programs is as such. At 7:30 p.m. we start with Quran recitation, followed by the tafsir. We then move on to Marsiya and Salam. We then move on to the speech by Sayyid Zisham, with a parallel kids program also in the basement. We then finish off with Naha and Ziyarat, inshallah. For today's Sayyid will be staying back, inshallah, after the program to take any questions or discuss anything related to the past lectures. You are all invited to join us in the basement tonight right after Maghrib prayers. In addition to our daily programs, Mahdi Youth will be hosting 3 discussions with the Sayyid. This Thursday, July 11th, there will be a co-ed discussion, and this Friday, July 12th, there's a brothers only discussion, and on Saturday, July 13th, there's a sisters only discussion. These all will start at 9:45 p.m. after Salah in the basement. We invite you all to join us. We're looking for brothers to sign up to recite during our daily programs. If any of you are interested in reciting Quran, Salam, Marsiya, Naha, or Ziyarat, please scan the QR code on the screen. Our team will be in touch with you shortly to confirm the dates. Lastly, these programs are not possible without your support. We are reaching out to you all to help us cover our costs for Muhurram and to donate to the Muhurram Fund. You can sponsor a majlis for $250 or the Sabil for $150 each night. For more information and to book, please visit us at the MY booth at the brothers or sisters entrances, or contact the phone number on the screen. The Mahdi Youth Society is taking part in the Nainawah 2024 conference, which is taking place this Sunday, July 14th, at the Afghan Canadian Islamic Community in North York. The conference will include lectures by respected scholars Sheikh Mustafa Khund, Sayyid Muhammad Hassan Al-Shara, Dr. Sayyid Hadi Qazwini, and Hajj Hasnain Rajab Ali, as well as a recitation by Mullah Ali Fadl. There will also be an art auction with proceeds going towards a water project in Iraq through the Al-Ain Social Care Foundation. Space is limited, so make sure to get your tickets ASAP through the link on our socials. Lastly, a bit of housekeeping. Please maintain your phones on silent. And we have a request for Fatiha for the Marhumeen of tonight's sponsors, all of our Marhumeen, especially Sayyid Asad Jafri. As you recite Fatiha, I'd like everyone to move up, inshallah, and we'll like to invite up Sayyid Zisham to the minbar with 3 loud salawat.
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين حبيب قلوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد اللهم صل على محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين لا سيما بقية الله في الأراضين روحي وأرواحنا لتراب مقدمه الفداء فقد قال الله في كتابه المجيد أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم وما هذه الحياة الدنيا إلا لهو واللعب وإن الدار الآخرة لهي الحيوان لو كانوا يعلمون صدق الله العلي العظيم. For the hastening of the reappearance of our Imam, please recite a louder salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And to the extent of our desire to join the caravan of Imam Hussain and give our allegiance to the Imam of our time at the time of his return, please recite the loudest of salawat. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. Assalamu alaikum jami'an. What we've been talking about, or what we ended talking about last time, was about the faculty of the intellect that all of us possess, and how the intellect and its ability to understand things and grasp reality is something that changes us. It's a dimension that in fact is the most real part of us. And we showed very, very briefly at the end of last session how immaterial things, immaterial pleasures, immaterial aspects of our lives are more real to us and more meaningful to us than the material parts. And that's something that more than likely we all recognize, right? We gave the examples of, the friendships that we have, right? If you ask anyone, even a very rich person, what is it that gives them more pleasure, more meaning in their lives? They might say money and things, but when they're actually honest with themselves, if they actually had a choice of, having money but zero friends and zero meaningful relationships, nobody would actually choose that. They have the money but nothing meaningful to do with it, to have with it, to build with it. Nobody likes that. Nobody wants that. It's the relationships, those things that are much more meaningful to us. On a similar line, but on a greater scale, in a scale that we sometimes hesitate to approach, is our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's even higher than the relationships that we have with each other and anything that we can build in this world. And a microcosm of that is these majalis that we have here. Right? If you think about it, it's an astounding thing that 1400 years later, these majalis are still going on. If you think about it, just look at history, the patterns of history, right? The Shia at the beginning of Islam didn't exist, right? At least not in an organized fashion and things like this. There were some ashab that knew things more than others, but as an organized group of people that were well aware of things, didn't exist. By the time that Yazid was the Khalifa, things were going down and down and down. After that, what do you see? Yes, there's this brief period of time where Imam Baqir and Imam Sadiq had a bit of freer time to propagate the religion, to expand on Islamic teachings. But even they were made shaheed. Even they were martyred, killed. The Imams after, the amount of oppression they had. Right? Imam Kazim being brought from one prison to another. Imam Rida alayhi salam being forcibly taken from Medina to Tus. Imam after Imam. But look what's happening on the other side, the Shia. Despite the oppression increasing and increasing, the strength of the Shia was also increasing. The organization was increasing. It's a miracle if you think about it. That how did that happen? How did it happen that despite the increasing pressure on the Imams, their followers were becoming more, and their organization was becoming more, and their knowledge was becoming more? This majalis are a testament to that. A continuation of that path. It is something immaterial, not material. We don't gain any material gain from this, or we shouldn't, inshallah, gain any sort of material gain from majalis. It's not about that. Right? We spend a lot. Everyone sacrifices somewhat to be here. Right? There's jobs, there's studies, there's all these other things that we have in our lives. We give up the time and the effort to come here, right? To mourn. We're giving up something very obviously material. What are we gaining? Why do we do it? It's not for no reason. It's because we've realized, whether subconsciously or consciously, that there's something important happening here. There's something very crucial. So the intellect, this faculty of the intellect is a very important aspect. I would say it's the real self. and the real part of us. And it's our ability, when we use this intellect, to grasp new things that changes us. The real change that happens within us is in direct correlation to our awareness of reality, or our ignorance of it. That is us changing in one side of the spectrum or the other. People might say, well, no, isn't it, the actions? Isn't the actions the thing that's changing you one way? No. The actions are the vehicle of the change. But the actual change is the awareness, the knowledge. That is who we are. Yes, I'm not trying to say that the actions are not important. They're crucial. Without the actions, a lot of times we don't even get to the knowledge. Right? We're not able to access it. It's not given to us. We don't qualify for it. Right? But the change is with the knowledge. Understand? But what is knowledge? Does knowledge mean like anything? I could read any sort of article, I could read any sort of thing, whatever it is, I can learn, underwater basket weaving, and that's going to be something that is knowledge. It's something that I didn't know, now I know it. And that's true. To some level it is knowledge, regardless of what you do, whatever thing you have. It would be some level of awareness of reality. But the ability of something to change you is in direct correlation with the purpose that you put with it. If I know all the minutiae of different fields, but my purpose in that, my purpose of knowing it, isn't some actual thing, it's just, to gain money, to have a good life, or just to even show off in front of other people, self-satisfaction, to say that I'm the smartest person in the room. If that's the reason that I'm doing it, then the change that it can influence within myself is limited to that. It can't go beyond it. It's only when the purpose is oriented with the ultimate reality, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that change happens in that correlation properly. Before I move on, there's a thought that came to my mind. It has nothing to do with what I just said. It has something to do with what I said 2 sentences ago, or 5 sentences ago. But I'll say it because it's a beautiful thing. One of the oldest dictionaries that we have in Arabic is written or compiled by a person by the name of Khalil ibn Ahmed al-Farahidi. This person happens to be a Shia as well, which is one of the strange things of these early dictionaries, but he's a Shia as well. It's narrated, again, this is historical narrations, it's not a hadith or anything, but narrated that people went and asked him that, what do you say about the fadilat of Imam Ali alayhi salam? Like, what would you say about the fadilat of Imam Ali alayhi salam? He responds, and I don't remember the exact Arabic poetry in which he responds it, but the gist of it is this. He says that what can you say in the fadilat of someone who's both, on one side, his enemies are hiding his fadilat because they're fearful of what might happen, they're jealous of him, and they don't want, his sort of characteristics and how great of a person he is to be known. And his lovers are also hiding his fadilat because they're fearful of becoming recognized and then being persecuted. And despite that, still his fadilat fills the east and the west. That was a Nara Hadri moment. But Ya Ali. Why am I mentioning this? It's because over the course of time in history, we see that the truth becomes more apparent. Yes, there is clouding of it. Yes, there is confusion, and this day and age is the day and age of confusion. But if you take that long-term perspective, if you look at things with that broad perspective, truth will be apparent. It isn't the case, right? For some reason we have this almost inferiority complex that, we're the Muslims and we're being oppressed and we're doing all this and like everyone is against us, and that might all be valid. But that doesn't mean that we're inferior. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised us victory. Ultimate victory. It's ours. Right? So what's holding us back? Why do things hold us back? What's the link between this and the intellect? Might seem that it's completely irrelevant. There's a link here too. What holds us back from the intellect is also something similar. It's an inferiority complex. It's an understanding that the place that has the ultimate gems and the ultimate advancement and progress is all in the West. It's in America, it's in Canada. It's these places that have advancement. These people are, first world countries, to use the non-political term. Why do we feel like that? And sometimes we're the architects of our own confusion. We have this thing, I don't know who coined this term first, but it's something that's become popular. If you look in history books and things, they say there's a golden age of Islam. Right? If you look at when was this golden age of Islam, they'll say it starts from Harun al-Rashid, when he had this, this Darul Hikmah or Baytul Hikmah, whatever it was called, this house of wisdom that he created, where he collected lots of various books from the random corners of the earth and translated them all into Arabic, and it became a center of learning. And then from that time all the way to maybe till the time that the Mongols sacked Baghdad, so that this was the golden age of Islam. Why? Because it was a center of learning. Look at all the advancements and progress that was made at that day and age. They all linked back to the Islamic Ummah. They were the scientists, they were the innovators, they were the ones who were doing these things. But was it really a golden age? Is it something that we should take pride in? Look what's also happening at the same time within the Muslim Ummah. At the same time, the Muslim Ummah is suffering a great decay in its morality. They're going further and further away from Islamic teachings. Yes, there are these technological progress that's happening, but it's happening at the same time that the people are going further away from Islam. Why would we call it a golden age? We have to understand that we should be willing, completely and utterly willing to sacrifice the technological and advancement in science and knowledge of this world for the sake of the next. If it comes to that. I'm not saying it has to come to that. If it was an ideal world, we would have both. There's no problem. It's good to have advancement in anything. But which one is more important? This is something difficult for a lot of us to handle. Right? Perhaps, if it's the older generation, perhaps they came to over here, to Canada or United States or this side of the world for opportunities. And they wanted to afford their children opportunities to go into good universities and then gain some sort of job and to be, the best doctor, best engineer, something like this or that. And I'm not saying that's wrong. Not inherently, at least. But what is wrong is to concentrate on that at the expense of Islam. I don't need technological advancement to be a good Muslim. But I do need to be a good Muslim to be a human, to achieve my purpose in this world. That is a thing that is easy to say, but I promise you, you look in your own lives and you'll find it difficult to live like that. Because everything we have in this society is pushing us to ignore ideas like that. Because it's threatening. These kinds of ideas are ultimately threatening to the orders of society that are around us. There's a reason why every prophet, every single prophet, had enemies immediately within the communities that they were sent to. It's not just from a thing of like, oh, I have a religion and I don't like your religion and then we're going to have a religious conflict. No. It's an understanding that if you accept an Islamic worldview and ideology, then it upends all of the existing social orders. And people who are in power obviously don't want that. And that's why I see that almost every single prophet, the biggest enemies that they had were the elites, the upper class people, the one who had the money. You know what that should do to us? That should make us pause and think. Because a lot of us are becoming upper class people too. And again, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm not saying it's wrong to have money or to have success. No, it's good. Do that. But be aware. Be aware of yourself that that causes difficulties within your lives too. I'll give an example. I'll give an example. There was a companion of Imam Sadiq alayhi salam. I don't remember exactly where he lived, but he lived one of the places far from Medina. At that time, it had reached the time where Imam Sadiq was under a lot of scrutiny, and the Shia were becoming more and more under scrutiny. So this particular companion, he becomes a bit more wealthy, and when he becomes wealthy, the Shia that are close by him, they obviously want, support and things, and so they go to his door to, ask for help and things like that. And he puts a guard at the front of his door to disperse the people. Not because he doesn't want to give them, but because he realizes that, well, if everyone is going to go to his door, and people are looking at them and see that they're all Shia, then obviously all of them will become known, and then all of them will maybe be imprisoned or persecuted and things like that. He goes to Hajj. He goes to Hajj because that's the only real way to meet the Imam at that time. Because in that whole crowd of the people going to Hajj, you can easily sort of slip underneath the surveillance and be able to meet the Imam. And so he goes to Hajj to meet the Imam. He goes, meets the Imam and says salam to him. The Imam responds to his salam but frowns. And he asks the Imam, he says that, what is it that I've done to change your sort of interaction with me? What have I done to change how you interact with me? Why are you... So this is a very beautiful thing too, how he asks the Imam. He doesn't say, why are you frowning? He doesn't say, why are you changed? He says, what have I done? What have I changed that made you frown? And so he knows that it's something about him, it's not about the Imam. The Imam responds by saying, تَغَيُّرُكَ عَلَى الْمُؤْمِنِينَ. How you've changed with the mu'mineen. He says that, well, he explains himself, he sort of defends himself, like, I didn't do it out of, any malicious intent or anything. He said, look, that's your intent for sure, that's fine. But what are you doing with the mu'mineen? If you want to reach, this is paraphrasing, I'm not saying exactly what the hadith is, but if you want to reach the wilaya of the Imam, you want to be of my companions, you can't do it without the mu'mineen. You can't do it without relationship with them. You're missing out. If we want to gain that ultimate reality, we can't be distracted by this world and the gains of this world. It doesn't work like that. Last time we mentioned a verse in the Quran where we said, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. It was in Surah Kahf, from verse number 103. It says, قُلْ هَلْ نُنَبِّئَكُمْ بِالْأَخْسَرِينَ أَعْمَالًا. Mentioned this last time, that should I make you aware of the one who is worst in deeds, the worst person in their actions and their deeds? الذين ضل سعيهم في الحياة الدنيا وهم يحسبون أنهم يحسنون صنعا. It's the ones whom all of their efforts in this world are going astray, but they think to themselves that I'm doing everything good. Everything is good for me. Everything that I'm doing is, for my benefit. Next verse. أولئك الذين كفروا بآيات ربهم ولقائه فحبطت أعمالهم فلا نقيم لهم يوم القيامة وزنا. These are the people who've disbelieved in the signs of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they disbelieve in the last day. These are the people whose actions will be swallowed, and on that day they'll have no weight. They'll have nothing to balance their scales. Nothing. We have to look at ourselves. Right? This is not something that is, a matter of like slogans and chanting and based on being in this majlis. No. Be honest. Have we oriented our lives based on our understanding that there is a last day? There is a next world. That our actions over here only count in far as how much they give us benefit in the next world. And if it's about the money, the status, the likes, the whatever it is, that's nothing. You can't take that past the grave. There's a reason why in Islam, time and time again, we're reminded about the akhirah. Look at about the number of verses that describe the akhirah, describe the next world, talk about punishment and reward. It's perhaps the most often repeated concept and topic within the Quran. Beyond that, look at the recommendations that we have of attending the janazah of the people who have passed away. Look at the recommendations that we have about visiting the graveyards. Look about the recommendations that we have that whenever you go on a journey, on a trip, write your will. Constantly and constantly reminding ourselves of death. We should have bought a kafan in advance. Why? Instinctively, perhaps if we were grown up in this society, we might think it's really morbid. Right? Something really morbid, that constantly reminding ourselves of death. Death, death, death. But that's only when you think of death as an end. That's only when you think as if death means that there's nothing else. But if we're thinking of death as just the next step to the next world, and the next world is where everything lies, that's the real world, then we wouldn't fear it. Right? Read in Surah Jum'ah, right? And if you really are desirous of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if you really think that you're the chosen ones of Allah, فَتَمَنُّوا الْمَوْتِ, desire death. Right? If you're truthful, desire death. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say about the Bani Israel? They'll never do it. Right? Why? Because of بِمَا قَدَّمَتْ أَيْدِيهِمْ, because of what their hands have sent before them. We can't have this sort of compartmentalization of our structure of thinking, how we have a paradigm of thought and decision making. I can't be Muslim partially and say, okay, I'm a Muslim when I'm in the center, I'm a Muslim when I'm reading the Quran, I'm a Muslim when I'm praying in Shahr Ramadan, in the 10 days of Muhurram. Every other time I'm not really Muslim, right? When I'm working, when I'm with my friends, when I'm outside, when I'm, in school, that's when I'm a student. That's when I'm a Canadian. That's when I'm this, when I'm that. We can't have that split identity. I'll put it further. There is no such thing as having this sort of joint sort of identity of like an American Muslim, Canadian Muslim, Pakistani Muslim. Doesn't make sense as an identity. Who we ultimately are. Yes, some facet of our being, some sort of things that describe us characteristics, of course, right? I'm not denying that. But something that ultimately informs on my decision making of what I'm going to do, It doesn't work. Because anything other than Islam, any other identity other than Islam will eventually come into conflict with Islam. Eventually. Islam will be telling me one way, the other identity will tell me to go a different way. What happens then? Which one do I choose? Perhaps me being a Western person grown up in the West will tell me that, oh, I should be, listening to music. I should be, hanging out with the opposite gender. Hijab doesn't really matter. Right? Maybe that's what it'd be telling me. Islam is saying the opposite. Which one outweighs the other? At the end of the day, we choose. Right? No matter who we are, ultimately we choose one thing or the other. And at that moment, what we've chosen is our identity. There's a reason why sin is described as shirk. Even the smallest sin can be described as shirk, as making a partner with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Why? Because when I sin, what I'm doing intellectually in my mind, what I'm doing is that I've decided that what is more important, what is more impactful is my desires. Those are more important. They're more important than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so the place that God has and should have is now taken by my desires, by the peer pressure, by the family pressure, by societal pressure, whatever it is, expectations. That's what's saying. And so it's a moment of shirk. That's why we have in the Quran, when it talks about tawbah, right? There's a verse in the Quran, I believe it's in Surah Taha 80 something. I don't remember exactly. It says, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. It says, إني لغفار لمن تاب وآمن وعمل صالحا ثم اهتدى. It says that I am certainly the forgiver of the one who repents. And then the second thing it says, the one who has iman. Why does God need to say that? Why does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala need to say that I'm going to repent the one who has iman? I'm going to forgive the one who has iman. Obviously, anyone who asks for forgiveness would have iman. Why does God need to say that? Because He's telling us, when you sinned, you turned your back from that iman. You closed your eyes to reality. You've chosen something else. If you want to make up for it, then you have to do the opposite. You have to reaffirm your faith. Now all of these things, again and again, what we're trying to get at is this. That there's this tight connection, as we mentioned last time, tight connection between how we see reality, what we understand to be reality, and our actions. The more real religion is to us, and our beliefs that we have, and the more in accordance with those beliefs our actions will be. The weaker and the less real it is to me, the quicker my actions will diverge at the soonest sign of struggle and hardship. And that's something natural. It makes sense. It's a common sense thing that will happen. Now again, I'll mention this because I feel like almost all of my talks so far have been pretty dark and gloomy and depressing. So I'll mention this side as a sort of as a pick-me-up. One of the beautiful du'as that we have, although I guess technically this could be seen as a downer too, but inshallah it won't be. One of the beautiful du'as that we have are the 15 munajat that Imam Sajjad alayhi salam that he mentions. The first one of which is Munajat al-Ta'ibin, the whispered prayer of the ones who are repentant. Within it, probably near the middle of it, there's a couple of lines where where the Imam says, addressing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that you are the one, أنت الذي فتحت بابا إلى غفرانك وسميته توبة, that you are the one who has placed a door towards your forgiveness, your pardon, and you have named it Tawbah. In another place, I believe this is in another dua, which is either the dua for welcoming the month of Ramadan or the dua for saying farewell. Right? Within that dua it has a similar line, and then it says that, and you've also placed a dalil, a sign, a signifier towards this door within your kitab, within your book. And you said, Tubu ila Allah tawbatan nasuha. Right? That repent to your Lord. Right? And then the Imam poses this rhetorical question. Says, فَمَا عُذْرَ مَنْ غَفَلَ دُخُولَ الْبَابِ بَعْدَ فَتْحِهِ. What is the excuse of the one who forgets to enter the door after it's opened? That door is open. We want to make up for things. That door is open. Wide open. We have in our riwayat, even to this extent, that when Fir'aun was about to drown, he cries out to Hazrat Musa and says that I believe in your Lord. Right? But it's to no sort of benefit to him. We have in our hadith, it's narrated that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reveals to Hazrat Musa saying that if at that moment he had truly turned towards me and repented, I would have accepted it. It's Fir'aun. We have no excuse. We can improve. We shouldn't let shame and embarrassment hold us back from moving forward. It should fuel us to change. Sometimes that happens, right? When we do something wrong and we realize that it's something wrong. We say that, I could, intellectually, maybe if we take the time to parse through our thoughts, this is the sort of train of thoughts that we have. We say that, well, I'm already doing it. I'm already bad. I might as well do it 5 more times. Right? I'm already bad. I'm not going to ever be a ma'soom. I'm never ever going to be someone that great. So I might as well keep on doing it. That's a trick. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving us opportunity after opportunity. Sometimes I feel it's things like this, these misconceptions, how we misconstrue our relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that makes it not so real to us. Who would want to worship a God who's looking at us under a microscope and waiting for us to make a mistake and punish us? Nobody wants a Lord like that. Nobody wants to worship someone like that. What's the point? But that's not how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is. When has He ever done something like that? When has He ever mentioned things like that? Time and time in the Quran, showing us opportunity after opportunity to turn back. Anyone who does a good deed, فَلَهُ عَشْرَ أَمْثَالَهَا, they have 10 times that. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala promises that. You do one bad deed, you only get that one. No multiplication. That's not a vengeful Lord. That's someone who's waiting for an excuse to help us. Yes, it doesn't happen on its own. We do need to make the effort. We do need to make the change in the things within ourselves. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is waiting for opportunities to help us. Right? These majalis are golden opportunities. We're already crying. We're already mourning. Let's take the time to mourn for ourselves as well. Our sorry state. If the Imam was crying and weeping in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on the night of Ashura, and I call myself his follower, why would I not take the time within these nights to do the same? It seems like a no-brainer. Obvious. What holds us back? What's holding us back? What's stopping us? I'll put it in a different way, right? Sometimes we look at this problem almost one-dimensional, from one aspect. Let's look at it from a different aspect. When we're around with our friends, right? and I'll say this to all age groups, whether it's the aunties and the uncles, to the the youth, people my age. I'll call myself a youth too. I am a youth. And then the people younger, the kids, right? Everyone, each age, right? When you're around your friends, a circle, right? Not specifically in the center, somewhere else, right? You're at someone's house, some da'wat, something, you're invited somewhere, wherever it is. You're hanging out. Why is it such an extreme rarity for someone to mention something about Islam? Say, hey, we're gathered together, we're all Muslims. Why doesn't someone just read a few ayat of Quran? Is that something we should be embarrassed about to do with each other? Right? Is it really that, negative and uncool of a thing? And why is it such a low thing on our priority list? Let's be honest with each other. The Islam comes out in the center, but on the drive home it starts to disappear. The Qurans are on the bookshelf, but they're the ones with the thickest layer of dust. If we are actually going to make an attempt to serve Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then let's do it. Make the hard decisions. Have that awkward moment with your friends, where you're that awkward person who brings up Islam in a place where everyone else is talking about sports and this thing and work and money and this. You bring up Islam. Have that awkward moment. Put them in that awkward situation where they don't know what to say. Put yourself in that situation. And this is to all age groups, right? Aunties and uncles shouldn't come out from this and say, you bache, see, listen to what the Maulana said. Why aren't you guys talking about this? No, aunties and uncles too. Right? Right? The kids learn from the aunties and uncles. Right? Change has to come on all layers. Why don't we do it though? Like, what's that hesitation? Right? I know you're thinking about, if you picture yourself within an interaction with your friends, you're like, there's no way I'm doing that. Right? There's no way that that's ever going to happen. Right? Thinking to your circle of friends, you're like, no, not going to happen. Why? Why is it? What's so shameful? It's because we don't treat it as real. It's not real to us. It's like stories, fairy tales, fables. That's how we treat our religion. A symbolic expression. This is maybe even the good scenario, right? That we treat it as symbolic of something not really, real, inherent in itself. Worst case scenario, no. Like, it's not even that. It's just something that we're forced to do by situation and circumstance. What's real is our jobs. What's real is putting food on the table. What's real is the money. What's real is this and that. If we live our lives like that, then our religion will descend and denigrate to that level. And if I think to myself and I say, I want to join the caravan of Imam Hussain, right? Say in the Ziyarat al-Warith, Ya laytini kuntu ma'akum fafuzu fawzan azima. I wish I was with you so that I could gain this great success. Let's not lie. Let's not lie to ourselves. Do we really wish that? If we wish that, we would live like that day in and day out. Sometimes we imagine the choice of what we would do in Karbala, and imagining ourselves in that moment. The moment there is an arrow heading towards Abu Abdullah, we'll say, yeah, I would jump in front of that. That's probably true. That's probably true. If it's a moment, then we would do that. But we'd also possibly do that for probably strangers too. Right? That's not very far-fetched. That we have some, relationship with people, we see someone that we like, we would probably sacrifice ourselves, we would jump in front of a thing, we would put ourselves in harm for their sake. That's not very far-fetched to do that in one moment. But to live our lives sacrificing everything, doing everything for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that when it comes to that point we're on the battlefield to be able to do that, that's very different. That means that the little things, the things that we do day in and day out on the hourly, minute basis have to be oriented towards Islam. If they're not, then I'm not even afforded the opportunity to be on the battlefield. Think about it. Do you think that if Imam Hussain wanted to, he couldn't gather more people? He couldn't gather more people to be with him? Wouldn't it be possible? For sure he could have. For sure. There's no doubt. In fact, we know that he did. Right? He headed out from Mecca with several hundred people. We know that. If he wanted to, he could have gathered more. There's no doubt. But it would have suffered the same problem that the army of his brothers followed. The armies of Imam Hassan, where they were full of fitna. Whenever the smallest thing happened, they would back out. The armies of Imam Ali, when he wanted to fight Muawiyah at the end, they said, we're too tired from fighting. Summertime is too hot, wintertime is too cold, springtime you have to harvest the crops. Excuse for every time. We're like that too. Now is not a good time for me to be a Muslim. I have to get a job. I have to put food on the table. Islam's not going to feed me. That's how we think. If you boil down the thoughts, that's what we think. If I want that to change, I can't hide from that. That's the thing that we're the best at. We're the best at hiding from ourselves, tricking ourselves, and patting ourselves on the back as if we've done something good. Think about the brothers of Hazrat Yusuf. We know the story. Right? They get to know the dream that he had. They get to know the sort of things that happened, the special attention that he had. They said, they're jealous. They don't like the attention that he has. They decide to put him in a well. They said, we can just do this one bad thing, then we'll repent. Right? Simple. One bad action, then we'll ask for forgiveness. God will forgive us. And that's true. God will forgive you. But you actually have to repent. And planning to repent is never, ever conducive to repenting. You can't game the system. Find a way to sort of, get shortcuts and easy ways out. That's not how it works. That's not how it works. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows our thoughts. He knows everything that's happening. These nights that we are coming together and commemorating Imam Hussain should serve as the biggest motivation that we have to become someone deserving of having the label of their Shia. And if you look at this, right, my time has run out and I've not even talked about anything of my topic, but it's okay. I think it was a good divergence today. But if you look at it, what we've talked about so far was just on the individual level. You talk about the social level, the communal level, family level. How many of us are living in Islamic life? Are our families, the relationship that we have with our parents, spouses, children, siblings, is that based on Islam? Is it that I'm encouraging my siblings, hey, I see that you didn't wake up for Fajr. Is there something wrong? Can I help you? Have I ever had that conversation with them? Have I ever said to them, hey, I see that you're a lot of times perhaps you're falling into this sin. It's happened in front of me, right? I know it might be difficult, but it's not right. And I want you to be better. Not commanding, not saying that, hey, be better. Why'd you do that? Not like that. But out of love for them. Have we ever talked to them and said that, let's be better Muslims? Is there a relationship that we have that's centered on the goal of becoming a better Muslim. Think about your relationships, friends, parents, siblings, children, whatever it is, centered on this concept. Unfortunately, it's a rarity. The path forwards are clear. All the times we say, oh look, Maulana, there's so much confusion, don't know which way to go. I put my children into Islamic school, they're still not getting better. We know the problem. We know the problem. The problem is that our lives are not Islamic. It's not really about Islam. Inshallah, in the future nights we'll talk more about this, and inshallah, eventually return back to the intellect. And we can spend a few moments doing the dhikr of Musibah of Aba Abdullah al-Hussein, inshallah. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Dear brothers and sisters, the caravan of Imam Hussein is on the sands of Karbala. There are many personalities that we can talk about that have great status. I'll mention two of them briefly. One of them is Zuhair. If there is any companion that we should wish to be like, it's Zuhair. Do you know why? Because out of the many companions, he is perhaps the only one where the Imam is personally going after him and calling him to the camp. The Imam goes after him. The Imam chases him. We want to be like Zuhair. We want to tell the Imam, I don't know what things I've done to shame myself in front of you. But Ya Aba Abdullah, let me be like Zuhair in front of you, that you come and take my hand and bring me into your caravan. But tonight, let's talk a little bit more about another companion. A companion that did not start in any way as a companion. When you see Hur, you see that his start in this whole story is ignoble. It's shameful. He's the one who stops Imam Hussein. He's the one who blocks his way forward. He's the one who doesn't allow Imam Hussein to go anywhere else but Karbala. He's the one who's in charge of that army for some time. On the night of Ashura, what happens? The soldiers look at Hur and he's shaking. He's pale. He's going back and forth. They ask him, Hur, you're the bravest of us all. Why are you shaking? Why are you fearful? They're nothing in comparison to us. Hur says that on one side I see paradise, Jannah, on the other side I see hell. He responds by saying that I will give nothing, I will sacrifice everything for paradise. Saying that, he gathers himself and perhaps he gathers a servant, a son, goes towards the camp on his horse. He approaches Imam Hussein. he approaches him in a special way. He approaches him without going off his horse. He doesn't want to make any threatening moves. He doesn't want to show as if he belongs in that place. So he stays on his horse. He introduces himself to the Imam and says that, Ya Aba Abdullah, I'm asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for forgiveness for what I've done. Is there any forgiveness for me? Is there any hope for me? Abu Abdullah says, you've been forgiven. Come down, join us. This is the Ahlul Bayt of Kiram, the generous Ahlul Bayt, the noble Ahlul Bayt. They don't turn people away from their door. But horse says, I'm the one who oppressed you, brought you to this place. Let me be the first one to go on the battlefield. According to many narrations, he's the first one to go out. He goes and calls out to the people, tells them of what folly they've been in. He fights until a time comes where he's struck. And he calls out to Abu Abdullah. Imam Hassan rushes to him. He takes him into his lap. He says, Ya Hur, Anta al-Hur, Kamma Sawakku Ham. You are free just like your mother named you, free in this world and the hereafter. على لعنة الله على قوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون.
تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں خواب میں اصغر تجھے میں خواب میں اصغر تجھے لوری بھی سناؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں لوٹا سفر سے کہ بڑی دیر ہوئی ہے لوٹا سفر سے کہ بڑی دیر ہوئی ہے بیتاب ہوں کب سے تجھے بیتاب ہوں کب سے تجھے سینے سے لگا لوں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں کوئی مجھے بتلاتا نہیں تیری نشانی کوئی مجھے بتلاتا نہیں تیری نشانی برسات میں تیروں کی برسات میں تیروں کی کہاں ڈھونڈنے جاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں میں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں تجھے جھولا جھلاؤں سوچا تھا تیری سال گرا گھر میں کروں گی